Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to your Daily Penguin, our waddle through my Penguin Classic wall, book by book, author by author, and period by period. The period that we have mostly been spending time in lately is the long Italian Renaissance, from the very earliest days, 1492, while Columbus sailed the ocean blue, all the way to the Northern Renaissance, with signpost years along the way. And our year today is 1516, uh, the height of the Renaissance. And what we're talking about today is a poem that was published then. It is immense. It is a huge poem. I have praised it before on this channel many times. It is a tough sell. It is a gigantic, heroic poem from the Italian Renaissance. There were quite a few. This is the best of them. This is amazing, but it's a tough sell for people. And of course, I'm talking about Orlando Furioso by Ludovico Ariosto, who used this as a continuation of Boiardo's long verse epic, Orlando Innamorato, both of which were pastiches on something we've already seen, the Song of Roland, which grew and grew and grew over time, metamorphosed into this amazing epic story, and it never gets more epic than in Orlando Furioso. This is a translation by Barbara Reynolds, the great Barbara Reynolds, in 2 volumes from Penguin Classic. These are mass market paperbacks, but I think Penguin has also done these in trade paperbacks, and I would like to hope, I haven't done my due diligence, but I'd like to hope that those 2 trade paperbacks are still in print. But it's difficult to know even where to begin describing this thing, because this is the whole length of the thing. It's an enormous epic poem in which Ariosto creates legends around the legendary founding members of the Este family in Ferrara, where he had the misfortune to be working for a poor member of the Este family, poor in the a poor excuse for an Este, not poor. The cardinal that he worked for was dripping in money, but he didn't pass on much of that money to Ariosto at any given time. It led to rancor between them. He was an ill-used servant, and he made this poem with a lot of help from his friends, a lot of encouragement from other courtiers, other people at court, other avid readers. The minute people started reading these epic adventures, with all sorts of callbacks to mystic items from the Iliad and the Odyssey and classic mythology of all kind, all sorts of fantastic inventions, dragons and hippogriffs and superpowered individuals, including Orlando himself, who is invulnerable and super strong. Also, science fiction. At one point, a king in Orlando Furioso travels to the moon. He travels to the moon because Orlando has gone. The Furioso here means not necessarily angry, but insane, mad, gone out of his wits. His wits have deserted him out for love, and he's become a rampaging creature across the landscape, and that's no small problem. When your rampaging creature is super strong and invulnerable to harm, he can sack a city and devastate an army. And one of the characters in this book goes to the moon because at the time Ariosto is characterizing the moon as a place where lost things end up. It's a magical realm where lost things end up. And one of the things that's lost is Orlando's wits. So this character goes there in the hopes of recovering them. But there are all sorts of others. There are sorceresses and magical beings and mystical monks and a gigantic and epic military confrontation between the Saracens and the Christians. All of it designed to raise to an Aeneid-style, epic mythologizing level the Este family, the origins of the Este family. But in the process, Ariosto has so much fun. Barbara Reynolds' translation captures it perfectly. This is a great, great translation. And I know it's going to be the last word that is going to come to your mind when you see a 1,500-page epic poem from the Italian Renaissance. Fun is going to be the last word that comes to your mind, and yet, oh my, this is such a fun poem. All sorts of twists and turns, all sorts of plot twists, and the fight choreography is amazing. Absolutely amazing. There are moments scattered all throughout this poem that are so much fun, and that will be very much of an acceptable mind frame to the censorious, Puritan-ridden 21st century. Granted, that 21st century won't so much care for a lot of the characterizations of the Saracens in these books. Not all some of the main characters are extremely noble, extremely beautiful, extremely refined, and Muslim. The puritanical mind frame that we have in 2020 won't like some of that, but I've noticed, it's a rant for another kind of video, but I've noticed that the Puritan censors among us tend to leave Islam alone, even when it deserves a little bit of criticism. So maybe they won't mind, but one way or another, they'll certainly love the treatment of women. There are, for instance, in this long epic poem, I should be showing both volumes, shouldn't I? In this long epic poem, there are, of course, mild, meek, pale, fainting, pure Beatrice-style females, including Angelica, the main female, the woman that makes Orlando lose his senses. But there are also warrior women, and they are amazing. They are amazingly done. There's one scene, one of my favorite scenes in the whole of the poem, really, where one of those warrior women is at a banquet. She is at a picnic. She's having fun. She is in her civvies. And a horrible knight shows up. I'm simplifying the whole thing, but a horrible knight shows up, and she says, "Well, would you allow me to put my armor on?" He thinks he's in no danger. She's one of the greatest warriors in the world. She thrashes him when she is armored, and could easily have done so without, as you get the strong impression. And character bits like that, little tongue-in-cheek things like that, are all throughout both volumes here. I'm okay with Penguin doing this in 2 volumes. It's a really long poem. There's virtually nothing in the way, not much in the way of editorial. This is all the poem. Barbara Reynolds has an amazing ear for rendering the playfulness of Ariosto's verse in English. She has a whole bag of tricks that she uses to do that you need. I have often said, when we talk about the vagaries of translation during this March of the Penguins, I've often said that what is actually needed for great translation is not one-to-one correspondence between the original language and English, but really a one-to-one, or as close as possible, correspondence between the attitude, skill, and playfulness of the original author and the attitude, skill, and playfulness of the translator. And that's asking a lot, right? That makes it understandable why so many translations fail. How can you ask a 20th century translator to have the imagination, the wit, and the talent of Catullus? It's an awful big ask. It ordinarily won't happen. In this case, I'm happy to report that it does, and the result is that you have Ariosto living and breathing on the page. You shouldn't judge this poem by Orlando Innamorato, its technical prequel. You shouldn't judge it by that. A good introduction to this will situate you where you need to be, so that you don't have to read Orlando Innamorato. There is precious little reason to read Orlando Innamorato, maybe on a linguistic level, but that would only apply if you knew what was happening linguistically. An English translation will only at best be able to convey what a lifeless poem it is. And the same thing with, unfortunately, Tasso, Jerusalem Delivered. I firmly believe, on some level, I like to tell myself that is why there's never been a Penguin classic of either of those 2 other epics, whereas this one did well, printed over and over again, and brought out in trade paperback. I don't know that this is taught in colleges. I hope it is. But either way, your Penguin classic for today is the most hopeless of recommendations. I love this book. Absolutely love it. I love this poem. It is everything that it does not appear to be. It is witty and sarcastic and funny and knowing, instead of being what it might look like, which is an extremely long, extremely dull, chivalric pastiche of some kind or other, something that might speak to specialists but doesn't speak to the modern reader. This would if you gave it a chance, but that's what makes this Penguin recommend so hard, because I know that a lot of people won't. They'll look at this and say, no way, it isn't for me, it'll never be for me. Steve might be enthusiastic about it, but I would not see why if I read it myself, and I'm telling you that's not true. But we're going to leave it there. This is a Penguin classic I could not do without. I'm so glad they made it, and it's a recommend. I recommend Orlando Furioso. It is amazing. It is amazingly good. Funny and smart and knowing and human insight and tons of great characters. And Ariosto shifts his scenes with an almost cinematic ear for how long you've been at any one scene. He doesn't do anything wrong. It's amazing to me that his alleged patron, another one of his patrons was Isabella d'Este, who was is a character extremely well known to me because she was a character in a book that I wrote called 1515, a novel that I wrote, where it was a huge Italian Renaissance historical novel that started out as an exercise for me because I wanted to see what it was like to write a 1,000-page book. I intentionally planned the thing to be 1,000 pages long, but it ended up being just a hoot to do for me. No one's ever read it, so I don't know that anyone would ever say that. But Isabella d'Este was one of my main characters, and so was another of her. She was a patroness to another person aside from Ariosto, and that person was Leonardo da Vinci, who drew a sketch of her. So, and Ariosto was in that kind of company, and boy, oh boy, Orlando Furioso deserves the same kind of immortality as, for instance, the Mona Lisa, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to get that, unfortunately. So, your Penguin Classic today is a recommend, but I don't know how far that recommend is going to go. So, I'll wrap this up for now. Maybe we'll still be in the Renaissance tomorrow. If so, well, either way, I'll see you then. So, I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.